So, what's next for you?
A little bit of bodyguard work.
Right.
After that, it's back to the Sector 7 slums.
You know how to get there?
Yep.
Of course you do.
One of my favorite sections from Final Fantasy VII Remake is this section right here. Cloud and Aerith have just escaped Reno and the Turks, and now they're on the run. What plays out is this 10 to 15 minute sequence of Cloud and Aerith interacting with each other while walking through the rooftops of the Sector 5 slums. I've always loved this part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake ever since I first played it, but for a while I didn't know why. Their characters are essentially just walking and talking, which is something that happens quite a bit in Final Fantasy VII Remake. After thinking about it for a while, I did figure it out. Part of it was the beautiful scenery, part of it was the beautiful score, but I realized there was a much bigger reason. Aerith. Final Fantasy VII is considered by many to be one of the greatest games ever made. The graphics at the time of release were revolutionary, the gameplay was fun and engaging, the scope was enormous. It was the first Final Fantasy game to be in 3D and on CD-ROMs instead of cartridges. All of these were big reasons for why people loved the original Final Fantasy VII, but beyond that, there was the game's story and characters. Final Fantasy VII was, for a lot of gamers, one of the first video games to have a story that was emotionally engaging. Characters like Cloud and Sephiroth have become iconic. You clicked on this video though, you know this video isn't really about Cloud or Sephiroth, although I do mention them in this video. This video is about Aerith. She's become a gaming icon and her death is one of the most famous scenes in any game ever. But what makes her such an amazing character? Well, I'm going to try and answer that in this video. I want to look at multiple aspects of Aerith's character to really see what makes her so amazing. Let me know what you think. Why do you think Aerith is such an amazing character? Comment below and let me know. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, as that would really help me out. With all that out of the way, enjoy the video. In order to explain why Aerith is such an amazing character, I actually have to first talk about Cloud, and the way he interacts with other characters. At the beginning of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake, Cloud is often very cold when it comes to talking with other characters. Cloud doesn't care about the planet, or at least makes it seem that way, but there's more to it than that. Cloud in general tries to act very confident and cool, as if nothing phases him, when in reality, we see that Cloud is far more awkward, human, and very isolated. We see this in flashbacks later on in the original Final Fantasy VII when we find out that Cloud was ignored by almost everyone as a kid, even by Tifa. Although the original Final Fantasy VII does bring up frequently how Cloud and Tifa were childhood friends, you find out that Tifa didn't even know Cloud that well when they were kids. He wasn't part of her group of friends and tries to make it seem as if her friends were just stupid, and that's why he wasn't part of Tifa's group of friends. Except they weren't stupid, he just wanted to be included in Tifa's friend group, but was always excluded and ignored. Cloud was always alone, and he developed thoughts that he must be different and even a bit special, even though he was just a weak kid. Remake specifically shows Cloud's isolation in very subtle ways. In this scene, Cloud and Tifa are separated by a space, and neither of them make an attempt to close the space, which implies a separation not just physically, but emotionally too. Also, when Barrett tells Cloud that he no longer needs his help, Cloud is barely acknowledged. When he talks to any of the members of Avalanche, they give him a brief response and just forget that he's even there. Again, showing his isolation from others around him. Cloud deep down cares for other characters, but he has an inferiority complex where he has low self-esteem about himself. He tries to hide it and appear tough outwardly. Him always asking for payment is him putting a wall between him and other characters. You see that wall when Tifa tries to give Cloud a high five, but Cloud is unable to accept that high five. That's when we get to Aerith.
Are you okay? Hey, are you okay?
I'm fine.
Here, this is for you.
When Cloud first meets Aerith at the start of the game, he's cold with her just like he's cold with everyone else. But Aerith isn't cold to Cloud, and even gives him a flower, which is something you don't really see in the bleak world of Midgar. Aerith seems gentle, and her attire, which is a pink dress with a red coat, also makes her come across as more humane. Aerith also needs Cloud's help to save her, which makes it seem as if she's not really a fighter, unlike a character like Tifa. That's the general first impression that players get of Aerith. She's warm, nice, and a bit friendly, fragile. Cloud doesn't see Aerith for a while as the focus of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake shifts to Tifa, Barret, and other members of Avalanche. Then Cloud, Tifa, and Barret attempt to bomb the Sector 5 reactor, but they fail and Cloud is separated from Barret and Tifa.
Come on!
Maybe you're not okay. Ah, he lives. Finally awake, are we?
Here, Cloud meets Aerith again and tries to act tough like he did in their first encounter, except this time he comes across as a bit awkward and he even apologizes once he realizes he's stepping on Aerith's flower bed. But instead of shaming Cloud, Aerith makes him feel at ease. Cloud tries to act tough again, but Aerith disregards that. When Reno comes, Aerith asks Cloud to protect her, and Cloud says that he will, but it'll cost her. Even though Cloud says that it'll cost her, deep down Cloud is a good person and he would help Aerith no matter what. He just doesn't want to show it. I mentioned earlier that the scene with Cloud and Aerith on the rooftops is one of my favorite scenes in Final Fantasy VII Remake. I said it was because of Aerith, and that's because Aerith's character really shines here. She's friendly like she was before, but she's also playful, witty, and she even gets a bit personal here too.
You know, I thought about leaving once, but in the end, I couldn't.
Too dangerous?
Too much. A whole world bursting with life. Maybe more than I can handle, I think sometimes.
Cloud still has his wall up, the wall he's put between him and everyone else, but it's slowly starting to be broken down. As Cloud and Aerith continue to go to Aerith's house, they slowly start to bond more. Cloud gets more comfortable around Aerith. Aerith helps support Cloud and even encourages him to be a better person. This in turn not only makes him a better person, but also lets him open up more to Aerith. Cloud talks to Aerith about things that he never talked with when it came to other characters. For example, Sephiroth. The first time Cloud mentioned Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's with Aerith.
Quit acting like you know me.
Aerith does know Cloud. She knows him better than any other character in the game. She sees through his tough soldier act and calls him out on it multiple times. And in contrast to Cloud's inability to communicate anything, Aerith is able to intuitively notice things. That's why after Elmira and Cloud's private conversation, where Elmira tells Cloud that he has to leave Aerith at night without telling her, Aerith is able to pick up immediately that something is wrong, even though neither Elmira nor Cloud tell her anything. Elmira telling Cloud to secretly leave their house at night is another example of Cloud being rejected by someone, and Cloud accepts it. It's what he's used to. But when he does leave, Aerith is there waiting for him.
Well, look who it is. Talk about a coincidence.
What are you doing here?
Waiting.
Why?
Because I'm not sick of you yet.
She actually wants to spend time with him. Most of the time when any characters want to see Cloud, it's because they needed something from him. Here though, Aerith goes out of her way to be with Cloud even though she doesn't really need him anymore. Unlike other characters in Final Fantasy VII Remake, Aerith constantly is trying to break Cloud's wall. That's why Tifa gave up immediately after Cloud rejected her high five, but Aerith continued to try to give Cloud a high five and continued to try to get him to accept it, and eventually she succeeded. Where other characters couldn't get through to Cloud, somehow Aerith was able to do it. She's the one who goes out of her way to accept Cloud when others couldn't and wouldn't. Cloud's still used to isolation, which is why when he sits with Aerith in this scene, he purposefully leaves a gap. Then Aerith on her own closes the gap. She's sincere with Cloud, which lets him let his guard down. When Cloud finds out that Tifa is willingly going to see Don Corneo, Cloud initially doesn't go and help her, even though he's at the very least slightly concerned about her. It's Aerith's strong resolve that pushes Cloud to go and help her. Later on in the game, when Aerith willingly goes to the Turks to Shinra HQ in order to save Marlene, Cloud now is the one who's determined to save her. This is all because Aerith changed Cloud as a person. She turned him from someone who seemingly couldn't care less about the planet and others around him to someone who is fully invested in the planet and others.
You gonna stand there and pretend you can't hear the planet crying out in pain? I know you can!
You really hear that?
Damn straight I do!
Get help.
So yeah, it was that kind of day. Let's go. Shouldn't keep Mom waiting.
Hey, what'd they say?
Good work today, guys. Kidding. They didn't say a word. But, you know... never mind. It's not like you'd believe me after all.
Probably not. Tell me anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
Aerith clearly helps Cloud out and has a great relationship with him, but she also interacts so well with other characters, like Tifa. Instead of getting into fights with Tifa about Cloud, she gets along well with her and they end up becoming great friends. She gets along well with Barrett too and goes to Shinra HQ just to save his daughter, who she doesn't even know. She gets along well with the children of the Sector 5 slums. She really gets along well with everyone when you think about it. All of this makes it so difficult for anyone to hate her, and it's a big reason for why Aerith is such an amazing character. When we first meet Aerith at the beginning of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake, we really see her personality shine the most. We know that she's a kind, empathetic woman that has a big heart, but we don't really know much else about her. To players, she's a nice side companion to Cloud. That's until she willingly goes to Shinra to save Marlene, and Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett go to Elmira. Here we learn about the other side of Aerith. Aerith was a child of Yfelna, who was the last pureblood Cetra, and Professor Gast Theramis, who was purely human. This made Aerith the last ancient. Professor Hojo killed Gast and took Aerith and Yfelna to Shinra HQ, where a lot of experiments were performed on both of them. Yfelna and Aerith escaped, but Yfelna was wounded and only made it to the train platform in the Sector 7 slums before she fell to the ground. The only one at the train station was Elmira, who was waiting for her husband to return from the Wutai War. Yfelna asked Elmira to take care of Aerith right before she died, and Elmira did. Everything was fine until Sang showed up and tried to convince Aerith to come with him, but Aerith refused. She denied being an ancient even though it was really clear that she was one. And not only that, she was the last ancient too. Throughout her childhood, Aerith was isolated and lonely, which you get a glimpse of during her graveyard flashback scene.
Hey, where's Aerith?
I'm ready! I'm ready! I said I'm ready! Come get me! I'm right here.
You see the sadder side to her character, a character who gives so much joy to everyone else but at the same time has to deal with so much suffering in her life. Aerith ends up joining Cloud and the others to pursue Sephiroth. Aerith knew that Sephiroth was linked to the Cetra and wanted to learn more about her heritage and protect the promised land from him too. As the game progresses, she learns more about her heritage and comes to terms with her responsibility as the final Cetra. When Cloud goes unconscious after giving Sephiroth the black materia and attacking Aerith, he sees Aerith in a dream. Aerith tells Cloud to take care of himself and that she was gonna go and stop Sephiroth. Only a Cetra like her could do it. Only she could pray for the white materia, Holy, in order to stop Sephiroth and Meteor. Once everything was over, she would come back. Of course, if you played Final Fantasy VII, you know what happens. This is probably one of the most well-known video game spoilers, Aerith's death. A lot of video games have main characters dying at some point, but Aerith's death in Final Fantasy VII hit harder than most games because of the amount of time you spent getting invested in her character. You really form a close bond with her. She's likable and her backstory gets you to really empathize with her, which is why her death hits as hard as it does. There are a couple hints dropped throughout the game about Aerith's death, but they're subtle and are hard to pick up on unless you already know beforehand about her death. When Cloud goes to save her, there's nothing to make it seem that Cloud can't save her. It seems that all Cloud has to do is go and get her. But then out of nowhere, Sephiroth goes and kills her. Aerith's theme begins to play, now conveying a sense of sorrow and dread. It's shocking and sad. Just like Cloud, you're struggling to come to terms with what just happened. Before you could process Aerith's death, you're thrown into a boss fight, and Aerith's theme continues to play, further cementing the feelings of sorrow the player now feels. And immediately after Cloud and the others lay Aerith to rest, they have to move on. There's no time to rest. And the impact of Aerith's death goes beyond this moment too. No other character had abilities like Aerith. Aerith was the only character with healing limit breaks. She's irreplaceable even from a gameplay point of view. When a character like Cait Sith sacrifices himself so that Cloud can get the black materia, you get a new Cait Sith that feels identical to the old one. It still feels like Cait Sith is in the game, but there was no other character like Aerith. For the majority of the rest of the game, Aerith isn't seen, but her lack of presence is frequently felt, and there are many moments where the player is reminded of Aerith. At the end of Final Fantasy VII, Cloud and the others go to the planet's core and they defeat Sephiroth. After defeating him, Cloud sees Aerith extending a hand to him. For a second, just for a moment, you feel Aerith's sweetness. Because Cloud managed to defeat Sephiroth, Aerith can now release Holy. However, it seems like it's not enough and that Meteor has already fallen too close, and due to the gravity near it, Holy's energy is unfocused and it can't take down Meteor. However, within the life stream, Aerith is able to command it to push Meteor back and help Holy destroy Meteor and save the planet. In the end, Aerith had to sacrifice her own life to save everyone else's. Her life was filled with lots of tragedy, from losing both of her parents at a young age, being alone as a child, but she still managed to make so many characters happy, and she was the one that saved the planet. She was the true hero of Final Fantasy VII, and it's fitting that the first and last character you see in the game is the hero. Aerith is one of my favorite characters in any video game ever. In the harsh world of Final Fantasy VII, where there is so much tragedy and suffering, Aerith is always willing to smile and laugh. She shows that even though there are greedy businessmen and monstrous villains, there are great people out there who do care and can make a difference. She gets along well with everyone, and her sacrifice is what ends up saving the day. I can't wait to see what happens to her in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. I loved how Remake expanded and delved into her character. Whether Aerith dies or not, I really hope that Square Enix can continue what Remake did and stay true to her character. But those are just my thoughts. What do you think of Aerith? Does she mean as much to you as she does to me? Let me know what you think. I'd really appreciate it if you can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, as that would really help me out. Thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome. See ya.
Is that...
Everyone dies eventually.
I suppose.
So we need to make the most of the time we have. To live our lives the way we want to live. Every minute, every moment matters.
I'll remember that.
Good.